This episode of Reading, Writing, and Ralph is brought to you by the Kathleen and Eddie Arthur Hearts of Love Fund. This fund was founded by Ed Arthur to honor his parents, Eddie and Kathleen, some of the most generous people in Alexandria. This fund stands as a way to ensure they can continue to give back to their community after they are gone. The fund has dispersed almost $100,000 to citizens in need, providing rents as well as other day-to-day expenses. They are now supporting the Domestic Violence Safe House in assisting women and children and providing safety and security to them as they leave their secured house. Please consider this worthy cause by donating through this link. Their safety depends on us. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Reading, Writing, and Ralph. I am excited for tonight's episode. It is a little bit of a different episode. First of all, the person we are interviewing, he has not written books, but he has done some one-person plays, so that'll be very interesting. Nice little mix-up. He is also an immigrant from Russia. Hi, Ralph. How are you?
Grace, great. How are you doing this evening? It's been a cold day here.
I know. I am good. Been staying inside. It is chilly and it is windy. Not the best combination. I hope things are good for you in Delaware.
It is. That was a great intro for our guest tonight. As you know, telling stories comes in different formats, from prose to poetry to screenplays. And Sufjan Zumikov has done a marvelous job, and he's getting a lot of attention through the work he's done as an immigrant and his comedic value in telling his stories. When I first met him, he had one screenplay done. It was the Soviet Boy with Magic Powers, and it talked about his childhood and dreams of emigrating to America and the like. And he's gotten beyond that, and his latest work, Flirting Like an American, is being picked up for an off-Broadway production. So
that's fantastic. That's amazing.
It is. And so I'm really glad we can have him on. And he's also a professor at George Washington University. So he's a very busy guy.
Impressive character. I am excited to hear more about him and listen to his story in his own words. So I will bring him on and let you guys take it away.
Great. Thank you, Grace. Good morning, Sufjan. How are you today?
Good morning, Ralph. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. It was a wonderful day here, but quite cold. I didn't have a chance to play golf, and I'm so happy to finally have you on the show. You've been a busy man, a wonderful story. So I always like to have my guests tell the audience about themselves, your background, your career, what you do for a living. And the one thing of note is that Sufjan is a Fulbright scholar here in America. But go ahead, you tell the story.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm from Russia, where I lived for 40 first years of my life. And then I came to the United States, first as a Fulbright scholar, as you mentioned, and then I immigrated and have been working at George Washington University since then. I teach politics of Russia at George Washington University, but maybe more interestingly, I also teach U.S. history at a small college called Stevenson University near Baltimore. And my colleagues joke that I teach Russian history of America to American students.
That's a pretty good compliment, I guess. So, how do students in America react to Russian history and um, being taught by someone from Russia and not an American professor?
Well, it is actually, I think, a wonderful thing for students, not just personally because of me, but it's I kind of serve as a window to that mysterious world on the other side of the globe. And what I usually do when I teach Russian or Soviet history and politics, I usually use my storytelling uh, techniques, and I tell stories about my grandfather, how he lived before World War II, during and after World War II, about my parents who grew up and lived all their lives in the Soviet Union, about my experience growing up in the Soviet Union and then after it fell apart in Russia, and more importantly, probably I do in my classes sometimes the same thing that I do in my shows. I compare American culture and Russian culture and help them not only to understand the Russian history and culture, but also appreciate their own American culture. Because sometimes you take for granted that you have freedom, that you have a consumerist economy, which is so wonderful, and you get used to everything. But then when I tell them this is not for granted, this has historical roots, founding fathers and later the society choose this path, and that's why the United States is the way it is. And then I show them the example of a country which choose a different path, and I think that makes students appreciate what they have better.
So, let me ask you a question. Um, and most Americans don't appreciate or understand what it was like growing up in the USSR. Um, what is the thing that is most similar from America to growing up in Russia, and what is the thing that's least similar growing up in America versus Russia?
Well, that's a very deep question, and I mm, can relate my experience when I first came to the United States, and it was in 2005, uh, over a decade after the Soviet Union fell apart, and I witnessed how this mighty empire, this really like big state, powerful state with its own ideology and economy and everything, fell apart, and I we were living in ruins, not in physical ruins, but in ideological ruins, worldview ruins. We didn't know what to think now, what's good, what's bad. So when I came to the United States, my biggest cultural shock, among many, of course, was that it was still all here. There was ideology, there was right and wrong, there was good and bad. Uh, so I think that was uh, what was similar between the Soviet Union and the United States, that there was this strong superpower way of thinking. And we thought we were right, Americans thought that they were right, and that what made these two countries superpower. What was different? Probably everything inside. Because it is like there is no similarities. I'll tell you, everything is completely different. If I start, for example, speaking a foreign language that you don't speak, you won't be able to understand me.
Right.
And we usually don't think that the same applies to behavior and culture. Where if I start behaving Russian, you'll think I'm crazy. But the same thing, if you start behaving American in Russia, everybody will think, oh, something's wrong with this guy. He behaves inappropriately. So the same way as languages are different, cultures are different. So actually, one cultural anthropologist asked me an advice. He said, "Could you think of one advice that you would give to a foreigner, an American in Russia or a foreign country who tries to blend in?" And he gave me 2 3 days to think about it. So I was thinking. I have cultural anthropologist background myself, and I thought about a lot of things, and then I came to one advice. I told him that try to say and do as little as possible, because everything you say and everything you do will be wrong, because you are acting on a different cultural biases.
Right, exactly. So, when we started, when I was first introduced to you, and when we started our conversation, you were just working on the boy with magical Soviet boy with magical powers. Tell us the how you came to name your screenplay that, and why that name is important to you. And
Well, it grew out of a story that I told at NPR, and not an NPR, The Moth, which is aired on NPR, but my story was not aired on NPR. So I told it that story about my grandfather who kind of had this believed that he had magical power, that he can put spell on other people, and he tried to do it a helpful way. Of course, if there's such a thing as putting spell on somebody in helpful way. And After I told that story, I thought, well, actually, this could be interesting for American audience as well, since in this sweet child way of thinking, it introduces a different world to them. And a lot of my audience, many people from my audience, they remember these times, and they probably were wondering what was going on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Are children held in drawers? Are they force feed borscht? So, and and I thought that, and still, like, even though of course we lived in our own world, however, this echo of the Cold War, this image of America, penetrated my childhood. So, and I put it in my stories as well as much as I could, so that the audience could relate to it.
yeah, I mean, our images of what it might be like growing up behind the Iron Curtain, obviously someone my age, um, is what we heard in school, and there wasn't much information, so we didn't know uh, any reality, or had no sense or perspective of what might actually be taken. But you go through childhood, and when did you think about seriously wanting to come to America? When did that occur?
Much late in my life, because I tried to learn foreign languages, but I failed miserably in my school years and university years. I was trying to learn German, but couldn't succeed. So uh, when, like, in my late 20s, I gave up. I thought I don't have any talent for languages. And then I met this wonderful English teacher, and he offered me to teach me English. I did him a favor, and he said, as a thank you, I'll teach you English. I said, that's okay, I don't have talent for languages. And he said this amazing phrase. He said, but we are speaking a language right now. So how come you don't have talent for languages? Everybody does. And with that simple argument, he really persuaded me that I can learn English. And so when I was 30 years old, I started from the scratch. And it was the most amazing thing in my life. I learned the basic English pretty quickly. And 5 years later, I found myself in the United States.
Wow.
That was, since I didn't speak English before 30, I never thought of coming to the United States. But then suddenly this man opened a whole world for me. I was so grateful to him for that, and will be for the rest of my life.
It's quite a story. So what I'd like to do now is show a couple of minutes of your video. The boy with the Soviet boy with magical powers. So let's give the audience a glimpse of that program.
When I was 12 years old, a beautiful blonde lady visited my grandfather and brought him a short hair. And Grandpa put his silver ring on the hair and whispered something over it and told her, the owner of this hair will propose to you soon, but you need to be proactive yourself. I thought, I wonder what proactive means. But the beautiful lady didn't ask questions. It seemed as if she knew what proactive meant. And after she left, Grandpa told me, you witnessed magic today. And I want you to know that one member of our extended family always inherits magic. And I think it is you. However, you also should know that in order to balance that talent, we always have 7 fools in our family. When one fool dies, another one is born or marries into our extended family. And the number always remains 7. Then Grandpa put his silver ring on my finger. And the ring had an Arabic inscription, and Grandpa said that it was the spell. And he taught me, say, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, which means I seek refuge from the Lord of daybreak, and then make your wish, and it will work. I thought, I have a superpower now. Next day, my first cousin Janti and I went to play soccer. I showed the ring to Janti and he said, you should put spell on our goal. And I thought, that's a great idea. And I put my ring against the goalpost and said, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, I wish to seal this goal. And it worked. Though the other team was stronger than ours, they couldn't deliver. And at the end of the first half, we were leading 2-0. And then we switched sides. And the other team instantly delivered. But we were still leading 2-1. And then Janti ran up to me and said, you need to break the spell on the old goal and put it on our new one. So I left my right wing defense position and ran toward our old goal and broke the spell. However, while I was doing my magic, the other team attacked from the right wing flank that I supposed to defend and evened the score 2-2. Then I ran back to our new goal and put my ring against the goalpost and said, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. However, before I made my wish, the ball hit me in my head and got into the goal. And we lost the game 2-3. That day I became so unpopular. Even Genti avoided me. And I thought, Genti is a fool. I will never go to his house to play with him again. His twin sisters, Dina and Dana, always fight with us girls against the boys, and his parents always take the side of the girls. And suddenly I realized Genti's family are the 5 fools. But I couldn't figure who were the other 2 fools, because there should be 7. So at the dinner, I casually asked my father, Dad, did Grandpa tell you about 7 fools? He said, sure he did. I said, well, I can count only 5. And he said, okay, let's hear their names. I said, Uncle Yuri, Aunt Maria, and my cousins Genti, Dina, and Dana. My mother said, that's not nice of you to say. They always invite you to stay over at their house. And my father said, no, it makes sense. At least about my brother Yuri. And I said, yeah, but that's only 5. Who are the other 2 fools? And my father said, why? You should count yourself and Grandpa. That makes it 7. That made even Mom laugh. And Mom never laughs at Dad's jokes, except when they have guests at the house. And I said, no, I inherited my grandpa's magic. And my mother said, unfortunately, Grandpa is superstitious, but he is a very kind man. And my father said, one can't be kind and try to put spell on other people. And my father's words were really eye-opening for me back then. And that's when I decided to give up kindness and become a magician.
That's quite interesting. Starting to understand, or giving the folks here a little bit of peek under the tent, so to speak. Again, going back, 2 more questions on this. Did you ever realize that the propaganda and the information from and inside and behind the Iron Curtain was just that, propaganda, and maybe not how the world was operating outside of the USSR?
Not before I came to the United States. It's like a matrix. Like there is no other reality, and you believe it. So my biggest revelation was, I remember I came to the United States and I met this wonderful cultural anthropologist, Margaret Paxson. She wrote a book recently. She won an award for the best book about France, written by non-French. So we were talking, and we started talking about Lenin, who's like a founding father of the Soviet Union, like George Washington. And she said, that pig, about Lenin. And I remember I was taken aback, and I thought, wow, you can't say that about Lenin. He was a kind man. But then that made me thinking, and putting together all the facts that I knew. And I thought, yeah, a pig. He would order to kill people in masses. But he absolutely didn't care for human life. So it was this kind of outside, if the analogy for a Matrix movie, we keep it like Morpheus reached for Neo and pulled him out of the Matrix. So, like Margaret Paxson and others, they kind of helped me to pull me out of that Matrix and realize, wow, I've been living in a dream world all my
Wow,
life.
that has to be quite an awakening when you go through that. I can't imagine what it feels like. You mentioned English changed your life when you learned English. What other magical powers would you say the young Soviet boy had?
Oh, uh, well, we had the dreams of the future. Maybe that's one of the sweetest things was when I was growing up, because like in the United States and Soviet Union, of course, there are a lot of holidays, but in the Soviet Union, the biggest holiday is the New Year Eve. And for nothing else in particular, nothing happens. Like it's not like a Christmas or free when the country became free or anything, but it is because the Soviet ideology was oriented to the future, and the Soviets were telling us, yeah, it's really bad right now. We don't have things to wear, we don't have nutrition, but it will be great in the future. So this New Year Eve symbolized the holiday of the future, the holiday of the next year. The next year, a better year is approaching us. So and every New Year Eve was magic. And I remember one in particular when it didn't snow the whole December and December 31st. And then suddenly it started snowing at 9 p.m. And then my cousin and my uncle came, who I really loved so much, to wish Happy New Year to my family. And these two things, the snow and the uh, this people who I loved coming, was so much, it I couldn't hold it inside me. So I ran out of the house and I dropped myself in the snow. I was like 9 years old and I started rolling in the snow like a puppy. Only that's how I could express my joy. So there were a lot of such magical moments. So it wasn't everything propaganda and ideology. And human is human. So human nature overcomes, if not all devastations, at least most of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, you know, no matter where you are and where you live and what your culture is, cherishing those happy moments is powerful. And I guess you can express it as a magical power. And we all hold on to those. Let's turn the mood a little bit lighter now and come to your screenplay that's getting some notoriety. And I think you've got some news about that. Flirting Like an American. So here you are, you immigrate to America. You don't really know much what to think, and you're single at the time, if I have that correct. And what's it like when you have to go on the dating scene?
Oh boy, it's like really tough. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to wear. You don't know what to say. So it's like learning on your own mistakes. And the thing is that one of the things, one of the side effects of learning language is that you learn language, learn the culture through movies. So I, for example, used TV show sitcom Friends to learn English, and I picked a lot of things from that movie, and then I tried to use them, which is insane if you think about it, because the whole point of the movie is to show irregularities of life. when things don't work, and that's why it's a sitcom and it's funny. But it was still better than behaving like a Russian. So, so uh,
So,
that
yeah,
was a
you know,
challenge, and of course, go ahead.
Russian, you know, growing up here, our perspective of Russian men and the ones that we were exposed to either through the Olympics or of someone like Boris Spassky, who was a chess player, and the politicians, Russian men never smiled, right? They, they were stern and had absolutely no sense of humor. So, how did you deal with that when you came to America? How did you learn to smile?
That was the toughest job actually, and I tried to smile, and probably I looked like the first smiler from a non-smiling culture, but I tried my best. And another analogy is the Terminator, how Schwarzenegger, the robot, tried to imitate like the movements of the lips, so almost like that.
So,
Right,
Sufyan,
recording.
we've been talking about men's personality, Russian men. They never smile, they never seem happy. But yet, here in the community where we've got a fair amount of Russians, the ladies always have a big smile on their face and a gregarious personality. Why do the women, Russian women, smile and the men don't?
Well, that's the toughest one you asked me so far. The actually, it's hard for me to say how it is in Russia, where I took everything for granted. But studies actually show that women in immigration adopt to the new culture much easier, learn the language quicker. And since America is a smiling culture, I guess Russian women who come here adopt better and start smiling better than their husbands.
It's a good answer. I think they kind of compensate for the husband's personality a little bit, but we'll leave that right there.
I think I like your theory better than the the research.
Thank you, Sufyan. Let's move on to the next question. So, you've got a couple of funny stories. One is that I enjoyed hearing from you was when you went into a senior, not a senior, when you went into a coffee shop and was ordering coffee. Hey, tell that story to our audience because it's hilarious.
Huh. Yeah, well, first of all, I want to apologize for my dog Pushkin. I locked him out of the door, so he's barking sometimes, which is a nice noise actually. So, yeah, one of the things that story how I was buying coffee at a coffee shop and I misinterpreted the attention of the young woman behind the counter. She was younger than me, and of course, I didn't act anything on her kindness. And because in Russia, when strangers are nice to each other, they are usually flirt with each other or want something from each other. So first, I assumed that probably she wanted me to go crazy and spend $5 in the coffee shop, but then she kept being nice, and I thought maybe she's flirting. Uh, and then at the end, she gave me a receipt, which I noticed had a senior discount. So I was completely turned out that I misinterpreted everything. And actually, I asked her, why did you think that I qualified as a senior citizen? And she said, because of your gray hair. So that's those kind of silly misinterpretations were part of my daily life.
Now, what other embarrassing experiences you had in the dating scene when you're trying to flirt or not flirt?
Wow, you're really trying to put me here. So, uh, one of the things actually was I invited somebody on a date and got to that level already. So when somebody agreed to come with me on a date, and I thought, so what do you do on a date? And one of the things in Russia when you are on a date, as an icebreaker, uh, men would take the woman's hand and compliment her on her nails. So I thought, well, nails everywhere. So I'll do that. So I took her hand, and she didn't have her nails done. So I complimented her for not doing her nails, and she said, "Are you sure you like women?" So, there were a lot of those embarrassing moments.
Just a little bit of a cultural divide. You know, we all go through it, even when we understand the language. Sometimes you just don't know. Um, but talk about the notoriety flirting like an American is getting and the successes you're having with that.
Well, yeah, somehow this show out of my five solo shows, this one is getting more attention. It got quoted on NPR, and I participated in this wonderful United Solo Festival, which is the biggest solo show festival in the world, off Broadway, and I'm really happy about it. And my dream actually is, of course, I love performing the show myself, but my dream is that a real actor would take it and perform it, kind of making the fake Russian accent and everything. I would love to watch a professional actor performing my show one day.
Who do you have in mind?
Oh, if I can choose, I would choose Leonardo DiCaprio, but that's too very high level, of course.
Well, that would be interesting. Um, he could pull it off probably. Anyway, but just to diverge a little bit, you've had some success with flirting in America because you met a wonderful woman.
I have, yes. Yeah,
Eh,
so after many failures, if you watch my show, you'll know all of them. And finally, I met somebody, and it didn't work instantly. Again, there were many moments there when I embarrassed myself and I misinterpreted and gave up at some point. But then we started dating, and uh, the rest is history, as they say.
Good. And for full disclosure, she is a dear old friend of mine, and I'm happy that she's happy and you're happy. So good luck to the both of you going forward. So what's next? Where do you go from here? And do you have more one-man shows planned and more script writing to do in addition to
Yeah,
working as a professor?
yes, I just completed my fifth solo show and premiered it on Zoom, which is called Lost and Found, and Lost and Almost Found. Uh, and I have this another idea of shows, working title is um, Russian History of America. And I want to kind of my narrator there will be a Russian professor who teaches American students, and there is this misunderstandings and other things, but also it's kind of educational as well, because all my stories fall in this kind of new genre that they call now edutainment, education and entertainment. So you're not
Huh.
only entertained, you learn something. So
Wow.
that's my next project I'm working on.
Fabulous. Let's show about a minute or two of the video from Flirting with America before we leave. So let's show that.
I moved to the United States in my 40s, and I discovered that Americans are kind of hard to understand if you didn't grow in this country. And it wasn't easy for me to figure how Americans think and what Americans want and why Americans smile. The other day I walked into a coffee shop in Maryland and I tried to act like an American, which means that I probably looked like a first smiler from a non-smiling culture. And the barista was this big guy with red hair, and he was busy doing something, and he was singing a song to himself. American woman, get away from me. And then he noticed me and he paused, and I said, hi. But instead of saying hi back, he turned away and shouted, Brenda, a customer. And then just resumed his song, American woman, mama let me be. Which may sound rude, but I'm not an American woman, so I didn't take it personally. So then this Brenda came from a back door, and she looked like a nice and outgoing person with a big smile on her face. And she said, hey, how are you doing today? How do you enjoy the weather? Isn't it unbelievable? The hot weather is over and it's cooler and cooler. So that's kind of attitude that I'm still struggling with.
Sufjan, it's been wonderful having you on. You're a great guest. Any final words you'd like to leave with our audience before we sign off?
Yeah, actually, I want to thank you and thank your audience, and together with your audience, everybody who ever watched my shows, because it gave me kind of a second life here in the United States, because the hardest thing for an immigrant is reinventing yourself. When I came to the United States, I had a personality, but then I realized that in order to fit in American society, my personality had to disappear. That was the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life, when my personality disappeared. And I'll give you one example. For example, when I lived in Russia, I thought I was funny. And that part of my character was based on probably about a dozen or couple dozen of experiences, moments when I said something and people around me laughed. So I thought, oh, I'm funny, and people laughed to this thing. And of course, when I came to the United States, I thought, oh, I'm funny, I'm going to use it to make new friends. And so I was joking. However, I noticed that nobody was laughing. And some people even started avoiding me. And then I realized that actually my jokes, my being funny was rooted in Russian culture, in a patriarchal culture. And here in the United States, which is not as patriarchal anymore as it used to be, my jokes were coming as rather sexist. So I stopped joking, and that was half of the problem. The other half of the problem was that when Americans joked and laughed around me, I couldn't understand why they were laughing. So I couldn't even understand jokes. So I thought, wow, I thought I was funny. I'm not anymore. And there was a revelation when Margaret Paxson, who I already mentioned, she became adoptive sister to me, introduced me to her family, and uh, I was accepted in their family as an honorary son. And one family reunion, we were sitting around the table, and my adoptive mother said, "Well, the moon is too bright tonight, and we don't have curtains, so you might have a hard time sleeping." And one of my adoptive sisters said, "Oh, I have a face mask, and it says sweet dreams. My husband gave it to me." And then my other adoptive sisters also said, "Oh, I also have a sleeping mask. It says Sleeping Beauty, and my husband gave it to me." And then I said, "Oh, I have my mask says," and everybody looked at me because there was like this cute conversation going on, and they didn't expect that I would contribute to it. They said, "My says Turkish Airlines because that's where I got my mask from." And they left around me, and that was the first time uh, everybody laughed at my jokes in the United States. And after that, my sense of humor started reviving, and other traits of my character uh, came back, and that process took about 5 years, and that was
Wow.
the hardest. So, what I want to leave you with is this is a country of immigrants, and like a big proportion of people are now here immigrants, and the majority of Americans have immigrant ancestors, and uh, maybe look differently at immigrants, and think differently of your ancestors who came to this country, and think of what they went through in order to uh, become natives, become Americans in this country. That's actually the overall message that I try to deliver. Of course, trying to lighten it up with some humor.
Great. That's very sage advice. Thank you very much for being on, and good luck to you. And we'll be talking to you in the future. All right.
Thank you so much, Ralph.
All right, great show, guys. I hope you enjoyed listening to those stories as much as I did. As Ralph said, some of those stories were relatable even from people who, have grown up in American culture. And other parts of the stories were so individualistic that you just have to hear them from Sufyan himself. So I hope you go check out his shows. He has some videos archived on his website, sufyanz.com. You can find that in the comments section. Thank you again to our sponsor, the Kathleen and Eddie Arthur Hearts of Love Fund. Check back in ZTV in February for more Reading, Writing, and Ralph. And until then, be the good news in someone's life.